"You'd have to, if the king commanded," the old captain told him. "No. Prince Trask is my friend. He saved my father's life." "And I won't fight you either, Count. We'll make a lot of fireworks, and then we'll each go home and claim victory. How would that be?" "I've heard of things like that," the captain said. "We had a war with Odin 70 years ago. That was mostly that sort of battles." "Besides, the king is Prince Trask's friend too," the boy insisted. "Father and Mummy heard him say so, right on the throne. Kings don't lie when they're on the throne, do they?" "Good kings don't," Trask told him. "Ours is a good king," young Count of Ravery declared proudly. "I would do anything my king commanded. Except fight Prince Trask. My house owes Prince Trask a debt." Trask nodded approvingly. "That's the way a Sword World noble would talk, Count Stephen," he said. The Board of Inquiry, that afternoon, was more like a small and very sedate cocktail party. And Admiral Schefter, who seemed to be very high brass, presided while carefully avoiding the appearance of doing so. Alvin Carford and Van Larch and Patrick Morland were there from the Nemesis, and Bentrick and several of the officers from the Victrix, and there were a couple of naval intelligence officers, and somebody from operational planning, and from ship construction and research and development. They chatted pleasantly and in a deceptively random manner for a while. Then Schefter said, "Well, there's no blame or censure of any sort for the way Commodore Prince Bentrick was surprised. That couldn't have been avoided at the time." He looked at the research and development officer. "It shouldn't be allowed to happen many more times, though." "Not many more, sir. I'd say it'll take my people a month, and then the time it'll take to get all the ships equipped as they come in." Ship construction didn't think that would take too long. "Well, see to it that you get full information on the new submarine detection system, Prince Trask," the Admiral said. "You gentlemen understand you'll have to keep it under your helmets, though," one of the intelligence men added. "If it got out that we were informing space Vikings about our technical secrets—" He felt the back of his neck in a way that made Trask suspect that beheadment was the customary form of execution on Marduk. "We'll have to find out where that fellow has his base," operational planning said. "I take it, Prince Trask, that you're not going to assume that he was on his flagship when you blew it, and just put paid to him and forget him." "Oh, no. I'm assuming that he wasn't. I don't believe he and Orm went anywhere on the same ship after he came out here and established a base. I think one of them would stay home all the time." "Well, we'll give you everything we have on them," Schefter promised. "Most of that is classified, and you'll have to keep quiet about it, too. I just skimmed over the summary of what you gave us. I dare say we'll both get a lot of new information. Have you any idea at all where he might be based, Prince Trask?" "Only that we think it's a non-Terra-type planet." He told them about Dunnan's heavy purchases of air and water recycling equipment and carniculture and hydroponic material. "That, of course, helps a great deal." "Yes, there are only about 5 million planets in the former Federation space volume that are inhabitable in artificial environment, including a few completely covered by seas, where you could put in underwater dome cities if you had the time and material." One of the intelligence officers had been nursing a glass with a tiny remnant of cocktail in it. He downed it suddenly, filled the glass again, and glowered at it in silence for a while. Then he drank it briskly and refilled it. "What I should like to know," he said, "is how this double obscenity of a Dunnan knew we'd have a ship on Audholma just when we did," he said. "Your talking about underwater dome cities reminded me of it. I don't think he just pulled that planet out of a hat and then went there prepared to sit on the bottom of the ocean for a year and a half waiting for something to turn up. I think he knew the Victrix was coming into Audholma, and just about when." "I don't like that, Commodore," Schefter said. "You think I do, sir?" the intelligence officer countered. "There it is, though. We all have to face it." "We do," Schefter agreed. "Get on it, Commodore, and I don't need to caution you to screen everybody you put onto it very carefully." He looked at his own glass. It had a bare thimbleful in the bottom. He replenished it slowly and carefully. "It's been a long time since the Navy's had anything like this to worry about." He turned to Trask. "I suppose I can get in touch with you at the Palace whenever I must?" "Well, Prince Trask and I have been invited as house guests at Prince Edvard's, I mean Baron Cragdale's, hunting lodge," Bentrick said. "We'll be going there directly from here." "Ah," Admiral Schefter smiled slightly. Beside not having 3 horns and a spiked tail, this space Viking was definitely persona grata with the royal family. "Well, we'll keep in contact, Prince Trask." The hunting lodge where Crown Prince Edvard was simple Baron Cragdale lay at the head of a sharply sloped mountain valley down which a river tumbled. Mountains rose on either side in high scarps, some topped with perpetual snow, glaciers curling down from them. The lower ranges were forested, as was the valley between, and there was a red-mauve alpenglow on the great peak that rose from the head of the valley. For the first time in over a year, Elaine was with him, silently clinging to him to see the beauty of it through his eyes. He had thought that she had gone from him forever. The hunting lodge itself was not quite what a sword-worlder would expect a hunting lodge to be. At first sight, from the air, it looked like a sundial, a slender tower rising like a gnomon above a circle of low buildings and formal gardens. The boat landed at the foot of it, and he and Prince and Princess Bentrick and the young Count of Ravery and his tutor descended. Immediately they were beset by a flurry of servants. The second boat, with the Bentrick servants and their luggage, was circling in to land. Elaine, he discovered, wasn't with him anymore, and then he was separated from the Bentricks and was being floated up an inside shaft in a lifter car. More servants installed him in his rooms, unpacked his cases, drew his bath, and even tried to help him take it, and fussed over him while he dressed. There were over a score for dinner. Bentrick had warned him that he'd find some odd types. Maybe he meant that they wouldn't all be nobles. Among the commoners there were some professors, mostly social sciences, a labor leader, a couple of representatives, and a member of the Chamber of Delegates, and a couple of social workers, whatever that meant. His own table companion was a Lady Valerie Alvarath. She was beautiful, black hair and almost startlingly blue eyes, a combination unusual in the sword worlds, and she was intelligent, or at least cleverly articulate. She was introduced as the lady companion of the Crown Prince's daughter. When he asked where the daughter was, she laughed. "She won't be helping entertain visiting space Vikings for a long time, Prince Trask. She is precisely 8 years old. I saw her getting ready for bed before I came down here. I'll look in on her after dinner." Then the Crown Prince Melanie, on his other hand, asked him some question about sword-world court etiquette. He stuck to generalities, and what he could remember from a presentation at the Court of Excalibur during his student days. These people had a monarchy since before Graham had been colonized. He wasn't going to admit that Graham's had been established since he went off-planet. The table was small enough for everybody to hear what he was saying and to feed questions to him. It lasted all through the meal, and continued when they adjourned for coffee in the library. "But what about your form of government, your social structure, that sort of thing?" Somebody, impatient with the artificialities of the court, wanted to know. "Well, we don't use the word government very much," he replied. "We talk a lot about authority and sovereignty, and I'm afraid we burn entirely too much powder over it. But government always seems to us like sovereignty interfering in matters that don't concern it. As long as sovereignty maintains a reasonable semblance of good public order, and makes the more serious forms of crime fairly hazardous for the criminals, we're satisfied." "But that's just negative. Doesn't the government do anything positive for the people?" He tried to explain the sword world feudal system to them. It was hard, he found, to explain something you have taken